What are the costs of setting up a Canadian corporation as a US owner? When a US business decides to create a Canadian corporation, the first question after what structure should we use is how much will this really cost? You will see government filing fees on price lists, but the true cost of setting up and running a Canadian company includes professional fees, banking, ongoing compliance, and tax administration. If you only look at the initial incorporation charge, you will underestimate both the budget and the internal time commitment. The goal is not to scare you away, but to give you a realistic view so you can match the structure to the scale of your Canadian plans. Government incorporation fees. The most visible cost is the government fee for incorporation. Federal and provincial registries charge a base fee to file articles of incorporation and create your company. The exact amount depends on the jurisdiction and whether you file online or through paper or an intermediary, but in the big picture, this is one of the smallest components of your total setup cost. If you want a named corporation rather than a numbered one, add the cost of a nuance or equivalent name search. If you need extra provincial registrations in other provinces, each of those comes with its own filing fee. On a per province basis, those fees are still modest, but they add up if you go cross-country quickly. Legal fees for structuring and drafting. Legal input is where many of the hidden costs sit, and it is also where you get real value. A Canadian lawyer can help you choose a jurisdiction, draft articles that match your share structure, prepare initial resolutions and share issuances, and tailor bylaws or a basic shareholders agreement for your situation. For a simple single shareholder corporation with a straightforward structure, legal costs can stay relatively contained. As soon as you have multiple investors, special rights, cross-border loan arrangements, or IP licensing between the Canadian company and its US parent, the drafting and review load increases. That is money well spent because fixing a badly structured corporation later is more expensive than doing it right at the start. Accounting, tax, and registration costs. You will also need accounting and tax advice to set up your Canadian company's tax accounts and reporting. That usually includes registering for a business number, obtaining corporate income tax accounts, setting up GST or HST registration if your activity requires it, and planning for payroll if you will have Canadian employees. An accountant will help you map the chart of accounts, design internal coding so Canadian revenue and expenses are tracked properly, and plan for first-year tax filings. There may be separate fees for initial setup and for ongoing bookkeeping and corporate tax returns. If you are dealing with transfer pricing, foreign exchange exposure, or thin capitalization rules, you can expect some extra advisory time in the early phase. Banking and financial setup. Opening a Canadian business bank account is not always as simple as walking into a branch with US ID. Banks are required to conduct due diligence on foreign-owned corporations. You may need to provide corporate documents, resolutions, identification for directors and beneficial owners, and sometimes in-person meetings. The direct banking fees are usually not large, but the process takes internal time and sometimes professional help. If you want merchant accounts, payment processing, or credit facilities, there may be additional setup fees and legal review for those agreements too. Internal time and opportunity cost. There is also the cost that does not show up on invoices. The time your internal team spends gathering documents, reviewing drafts, and making decisions. Every hour your CFO spends on Canadian structure is an hour they are not spending on operations or strategy. If you under-budget their time, the process drifts, which can create rush fees or missed opportunities. This is why it often makes sense to run the Canadian setup as a defined mini project with a clear owner, timeline, and budget, rather than as a side job for whoever has spare bandwidth. Ongoing annual costs. Once the corporation is set up, there are recurring costs to keep it alive and compliant. These include filing annual corporate returns, preparing financial statements, filing corporate income tax returns, renewing extra provincial registrations, and keeping minute books and registers up to date. If you use outside accountants and corporate services firms, you will see these costs as annual retainer or profiling charges. If you manage compliance internally, you still have the cost of staff time and software. Either way, a Canadian corporation is not a one-time expense. It is a living structure with a yearly maintenance budget. When the costs are worth it. All of this may sound heavy compared to shipping a few parcels from the US, but incorporation costs make more sense when your Canadian revenue and risk profile justify them. If Canada is going to be a real operating market with staff, contracts, and a long-term footprint, the clarity, liability separation, and tax structure you get from a Canadian corporation often more than justify the cost. The key is timing. If your Canadian opportunity is still speculative, you may be better off testing the market with non-resident registration and careful contracting first, then incorporating once revenue, headcount, or strategic importance reaches a threshold you define. Final thoughts. Setting up a Canadian corporation as a US owner involves more than a single filing fee. You are paying for legal design, tax planning, banking setup, and ongoing compliance, plus the internal time it takes to coordinate all of that. Done thoughtfully, those costs buy you a stable, credible platform for Canadian growth. If you want a clearer sense of typical cost ranges and how they scale with complexity, you can visit our website where we break down example budgets for different sizes of US companies entering Canada. If you require assistance with Canadian tax matters, our team is ready to provide reliable professional support. Please contact us at 416-283-8774 or visit theaccountingandtax.com for more information. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.